I need to see my boss. You stay at the dacha, said her husband. But he had no idea what his wife would do, because she... The silence of the countryside dacha, broken only by the rustling of falling leaves and the rare chirping of birds that stayed for the winter, felt a bit unsettling. Olivia sat on the porch, inhaling the fresh autumn air, and felt lonely. The season had come to an end. The sun had just passed its midday peak, gilding the crowns of old maples. The wind, rushing through their crimson leaves, whispered something about the approaching winter, while her husband, as always, was busy with his affairs. From a distance, Olivia watched Edwin fussing in the garden, raking fallen leaves into piles. Ordinarily, that wouldn't have bothered her, but now his movements seemed uncharacteristically hurried and somehow unnatural. They were supposed to be enjoying the dacha, yet all he talked about was work. For some time now, Edwin had been staying late at the office, and his silence pushed her away. In his eyes, once warm and loving, something anxious and poorly concealed had settled. "Darling, what's wrong?" Olivia asked, finally unable to hold back. He turned, brushing leaves from his hands, and his whole demeanor suggested he no longer intended to waste time on this pointless country chore. "No, nothing's wrong, everything's fine," Edwin replied, trying to make his smile look as natural as possible. "I've just got a few things piling up, need to head out for work." "Things that can't wait until tomorrow?" Olivia rose from the porch and approached him. He hesitated, squinting in the unusually bright autumn sunlight. "I need to see my boss." "You stay here at the dacha. If I'm not delayed, I'll be back by nightfall." "Your boss?" Olivia frowned. "What happened?" "Just something that came up." "Work-related," Edwin said, avoiding her gaze and raking the leaves almost mechanically. "You know I'm the head of the credit department at the bank, and the boss is always asking for reports. So what's the big deal? What's so difficult? You're not working alone, you have other staff. Let them prepare the reports for your boss," Olivia retorted, feeling her anxiety grow. "Come on, Olivia, this is a pointless conversation. I'm going anyway. Work is work. It's better for you to stay here. Look at this beautiful weather. Soon it'll get cold, and we'll have to shut down for the season." Her husband's answer made Olivia press her lips together resentfully. There he goes again, work. And we had agreed to spend the evening by the fire, grilling shashlik. Well, shashlik. More like ordinary sausages over some smoky embers on a wire rack. But why should I stay here alone at the dacha? Olivia tried to keep her voice steady. "I'll be worried." "Don't worry, Olivia, everything will be fine. Just wait for me a bit. I'll call you as soon as I sort everything out," her husband said, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "I'll drive into town, talk to my boss, and come straight back. You understand that these kinds of conversations don't tolerate any outsiders. And don't get upset with me. I earn well, you don't lack for anything." Olivia nodded helplessly, realizing there was nothing she could do. Her husband would drive off to see the director, Brad Laird. This fact alone made her anxiety grow. Something was wrong. A summons from the boss never boded well. Edwin was young and promising, a recent hire at Brad's bank. On the other hand, her husband already knew and had seen plenty, maybe too much. Olivia's mood soured completely. The dacha stood in a remote spot, and it was several tens of miles to the nearest halfway decent town. The phone often lost reception, and the road left much to be desired. Her husband had bought this dacha last year for next to nothing. He hired workers to spruce up the house a bit and do some minor renovations. In the summer, the couple had come here almost every weekend. More accurately, Olivia had mostly come alone. Edwin came only from time to time, when work allowed. "Olivia, I'll be quick, I promise." Her husband squatted down next to her and offered his hand. "Promises without explanations mean nothing," Olivia pointed out. "What happened? Are you in some kind of trouble? Why are they calling you in? And on a weekend, no less." "I can't tell you everything. Just accept it as it is. Believe me, it'll be better for everyone, her husband said, and headed to the car parked by the gate. Olivia remained sitting on the porch, hoping he would turn around and wave goodbye. But he didn't. He just plopped down into the driver's seat of his SUV and started the engine. Evening was approaching. Shadows stretched longer, and the dacha looked even lonelier. To make matters worse, the sky overhead was now covered by clouds, even though the sun had been shining not long ago. Olivia remembered recent conversations with her friends about marital problems. Maybe she had just imagined it all? Maybe her Edwin was the perfect husband, working for the family's benefit, making sure she never wanted for anything. Olivia pondered this as she began drawing lines in the dirt near the porch, listing pros and cons in defense of her theory. Work, prestige, financial security, these went into the plus column. But there were many more minuses: no children, frequent arguments over trivial matters, constant overtime, lack of personal time, endless business trips, and late-night phone calls. She could go on listing them forever. At that moment, a nervous thought flashed through her mind. What if she didn't stay at the dacha but followed Edwin instead? But how? The commuter train would arrive in half an hour, of course, but by the time Olivia got there, her husband might very well return. Though not necessarily. Lately, Edwin had been getting home past midnight more and more often, and today he might not hurry back at all. She faced a difficult choice. The train ride to the city would take at least an hour and a half. The bus was faster, but the stop was several miles away. Olivia, as if snapping out of it, resolutely pushed aside her sad thoughts. I'll go and find out everything. She stepped onto the road, hoping that some passing vehicle would come by. The sudden rain only added gloom to the landscape, and Olivia, being a professional graphic designer, couldn't help but notice this artistic touch. Without an umbrella, she shivered from both the cold and her anxiety. Suddenly, in the distance, she heard the familiar rumble of an engine. At the sight of the approaching vehicle, Olivia couldn't suppress a smile. The old car, belching exhaust fumes and swaying from side to side, slowly drew nearer. "Please stop." Olivia waved her hand, hoping the driver would notice her. The car obediently halted at the roadside. With a creak, the window rolled down, and a young man with kind, though slightly sad eyes, leaned out. "Where are you headed?" he asked quietly. "To the city," Olivia replied, feeling a bit embarrassed. "If you're going that way, of course." "Hop in," the driver smiled. "That's exactly where I'm heading. A dacha owner should help another." Inside, there was a pleasant scent of herbs and something else unfamiliar. Olivia looked around. On the back seats, covered with plastic sheeting, were bags tied with twine. Inside them, she could see some sort of herbs as well. "Are you into collecting herbs?" Olivia asked curiously. "Yes," the young man smiled. "I'm an herbalist. My name is Edgar. I keep my dacha and store my herbal materials there for decoctions and healing blends." Olivia introduced herself too. "Interesting work," she said. "I never knew it was in such demand." "It is. Many people use medicinal herbs," Edgar answered. "In our time, when chemicals are everywhere, this is especially relevant. For example, chamomile is a great anti-inflammatory, St. John's wort boosts the immune system, oregano helps with coughs, and sage treats throat ailments." "You're quite the expert," Olivia said admiringly. "What made you get into this?" "Oh, that's a long story. Everyone faces hardships in life," Edgar replied, his voice suddenly trembling oddly. "After my wife died a year ago, my 8-year-old son Marshall, traumatized by the shock, stopped walking. He ended up in a wheelchair. Medicines were no help. I went to doctors, but it was no use. They said, 'Let's do surgery.' What surgery when we can't get a quota, and we don't have extra money? And why surgery if there wasn't any injury to the musculoskeletal system? Then I decided to find another way. And herbs became our salvation." I began studying their properties, reading books, experimenting, and, they helped. Not completely, but Marshall recovered a bit. He's not what he was before, but at least he started to move again. Olivia fell silent. She felt genuine sympathy for this kind man. "It's not easy for you," she said as gently as possible. "It's hard, of course," Edgar agreed, "but I won't despair. Marshall is the meaning of my life. I try to do everything so he doesn't feel lonely or miserable." "He's still so young," Olivia noted. "He has everything ahead of him." "I hope that in the future he can live a full life," Edgar sighed. How strange, thought Olivia. Just half an hour ago, I was filled with anxious thoughts, and now I've met a person who, despite his troubles, never gives up, looks for a way out, and still manages to help others. The road wound through endless fields and forests. By evening, the sun emerged once again from behind the clouds, bathing the landscape in golden light. Watching the wonderful views whizzing by, Olivia almost forgot her worries. "I used to work as an orderly in a hospital," Edgar said, as if changing the subject, "but they fired me, supposedly for theft. I didn't steal anything. I just had a run-in with the head of the department who was taking bribes. So he set me up." "How could he?" Olivia exclaimed indignantly. "That's life," the man responded with a bitter smirk. "All sorts of things happen. The main thing is not to lose faith in yourself or in people. They're like these herbs. They help people and ask nothing in return." "But what about your son? You're all alone?" Olivia asked, feeling sympathy for Edgar. "I'm managing," the former orderly smiled. But the sadness in his eyes hadn't disappeared. "You're a strong person," said Olivia, genuinely admiring his resilience. "Don't give up." "Thank you. Actually, herbs aren't just plants. Each has its own secret and inner strength," Edgar said. "They're a gift of nature, and we need to learn to appreciate them." Olivia listened with interest as Edgar enthusiastically described the properties of various plants. She realized that this modest herbalist possessed a vast wealth of knowledge. Olivia said, "my husband works in a bank as the head of the credit department, and honestly, I have no idea what he does there." Hearing this, Edgar tensed strangely. The car swerved slightly on the road, still slick from the recent rain. Finally, he pulled himself together and remarked, "The banking system is complicated. Even those who work in it don't always understand everything. But the main thing is that the work should be useful and bring moral satisfaction." "Yes," Olivia agreed, "but I feel something's off. He went to the city this afternoon, and I feel like he's hiding something from me." "Sometimes people hide the truth from their loved ones out of fear," Edgar noted, "or to avoid causing them pain. I think he's in trouble. That's why I'm hurrying to the city to find out what's going on." "I understand," Edgar replied. "You can never have too much love and care for those close to you." "Thank you, you've helped me a lot," said Olivia. "Always happy to help," Edgar smiled. "Remember, there's always a way out of any situation, just don't give up." Soon, they arrived at the city. "I'll drop you off at the turn to the market," Edgar said. "It's hard to get closer to the center now, peak hour, traffic jams everywhere." "Thank you so much," Olivia said. "No need to thank me," he replied. "Just be careful. If anything, my dacha is at the very edge of the village. I inherited the house from my late grandmother. I keep an eye on it. And I also gather herbs. It's hard to do that in the city, especially in an apartment. My balcony's already filled up. But people know, they come and order. Also, take my number in case you ever need it." Olivia nodded. She took the crumpled piece of notebook paper from his hands and exited the car. Breathing in the fresh air, she felt an incredible surge of strength. Her meeting with Edgar, his stories, and his simple life wisdom had helped her believe in herself and her ability to uncover the mystery that Edwin was hiding. Now Olivia knew that there were many important things in life besides career, work, and money. There was love, there was taking care of loved ones. As Olivia walked down the street, people hurried past her, their workday coming to an end. Some carried bags of groceries for dinner, while others, on the contrary, walked lightly, chatting on the phone and solving urgent problems as they went. Finally, in the distance, she saw the Oasis Bank where Edwin worked. Her husband's car wasn't in the parking lot. Well, just great. Has he already left? Olivia hesitated for a moment, then decided to approach the security guard at the entrance. "Hello," she began, desperately trying to compose herself. "Could you please tell me, is Edwin here?" "Sorry, Edwin Smith, credit department?" The security guard, a strong man with a stern face, looked at her with confusion. "The bank is closed. There's no one inside." "Closed?" Olivia asked, bewildered. "But I thought it was. Still working hours." The turkey thought the same, the man replied. "Yes, madam, closed. The director is in the hospital, had a stroke, and for now, his daughter, Isabel, is running the bank. I didn't see your husband today. It's Saturday, actually. We only worked until noon." The guard's words stunned Olivia like a thunderclap on a clear day. A closed bank, a sick director, a female banker. Edwin hadn't mentioned anything like that at the dacha today. "What is going on?" "Isabel, then," she whispered. Fragments of conversations and rumors began to form in Olivia's mind, things she had heard before but had dismissed. Edwin often talked about closing deals, difficult clients, and competitive struggles. He frequently mentioned Isabel's name, speaking of her as a talented and promising employee who would soon hold a prestigious position at the bank. But what if it's Edwin? That thought made her stagger. Olivia felt the ground slipping away from under her, and sweat beaded on her forehead. "My husband lied. He wasn't at the boss's office and didn't come here at all." "Thank you," she whispered to the guard, as if in a dream. The heart of the deceived wife felt like it had turned to stone. Her thoughts spun in a whirlwind of anxiety and fear. Where was her husband? With whom? What was happening? Olivia walked slowly down the street, ignoring the noise of cars and passers-by. All her thoughts were occupied by one thing: Edwin, her husband, whom she loved so much and trusted so deeply, had turned out to be a deceiver. She stopped at the nearest cafe to gather her thoughts. Inside, everything bubbled with bitterness and resentment. She didn't understand what to do next. Where to go, whom to look for. Maybe visit a friend? Or better yet, go straight home. Olivia took out her phone and tried to call her husband, but the call always dropped. She shook her head. Now the eternal reasons for dropped connections at the dacha became clear. Her husband had simply blacklisted her number while he was traveling or on business trips. Then Olivia called her apartment neighbors. They confirmed that Edwin was not at home at the moment. In fact, they were sure her husband was at the dacha. Where else could he be on a day off? Suddenly, Edgar's face, his kind eyes, and his words about injustice surfaced in her memory. Edgar was the only person who was not connected to her social circle. Friends are great, of course, but once you share something with them, half the town knows about it the next day. Like the time Olivia had a miscarriage again. She had begged them not to tell anyone, but where could she hide it? Everyone was informed. Taking a crumpled piece of paper from her pocket, she struggled to dial the given number. "Edgar, this is Olivia," she said with a trembling voice. "Can you help me?" "Of course." "What happened?" I really need your help," Olivia cried. "I think my husband is hiding something. He's not at work, and the bank is operating on a reduced schedule today." "All right, I'll come to get you right now. I've just unloaded the herbs and fed my son." "Which area are you in?" "At the cafe near the bank." "It's the only one here," Olivia replied abruptly, as if emerging from a dream. "Okay, then wait." "I'll be there soon," Edgar replied and said goodbye. He truly kept his word. And before Olivia could finish her cup of coffee, he was already sitting across from her. "Well, tell me everything." Olivia hesitated for a moment, and then it was as if something broke through her. She told the scarcely acquainted man everything that had happened, her suspicions, the closed bank, the sick director, and his successor daughter. And now I don't even know what to do. I'm afraid that my husband... Well, you understand. Don't be afraid, I'll help, Edgar said. In that moment, in the quiet of the cafe, Olivia realized that she seemed to have found support. Not in her husband, who had betrayed her trust, but in this young herbalist who saw her pain and reached out a helping hand. Would you like to come to my place? Edgar offered. Spend the night, and we can sort things out with a clear head. And Marshall will keep you company. Olivia, realizing she had no other choice, agreed. Edgar's apartment turned out to be small but cozy. You step inside and as if transported to the past. The scent of medicinal herbs wafted everywhere, especially on the balcony, crowded with boxes of various plants. A thin boy with large, sad eyes sat in a wheelchair, sorting herbs, seemingly helping his father. Hi, Marshall. Olivia whispered, feeling a bit awkward. Hi, the boy replied with a smile. Soon Edgar placed a cup of hot coffee in front of Olivia, and she took a sip with gratitude. Thank you. Olivia felt the tension of the past few days start to ease a bit. Marshall loves to draw, Edgar explained, though he can't sit still for long. Olivia couldn't help but smile when she saw brushes and paints on the table. That's more my area. I know a bit about painting. Do you want me to show you how to mix paints? And how to draw, for example, daisies or maybe cornflowers? We'll paint summer, which has unfortunately already ended. Marshall's face lit up. The boy nodded, his eyes shining. Yes, of course, he whispered, moving his wheels to reach for a brush. Olivia took another brush and with a light professional gesture began to make strokes on the paper. Look here, she said, white paint is for the petals and yellow for the center. And to paint a field of cornflowers, we need to mix blue and light blue, and then add a bit of green for the grass. Olivia explained to Marshall how to choose colors, create light and shadow, and how to convey the beauty of a summer day. The boy listened eagerly to the guest and immediately tried to replicate what he saw. His hands, though trembling, reproduced the techniques Olivia demonstrated with surprising ease. In painting, you can see everything. The sea, the mountains, the stars, she explained, it allows us to feel things we've never seen. Isn't it great that with a brush and paint you can create your own world? Absolutely. I think so too. Marshall replied thoughtfully. Do you know? Olivia continued. There's a famous artist, an impressionist. He painted lilies, irises, and he really loved lotuses. Can you imagine, he painted the same motif at different times of day under different lighting. And each time it was a completely new masterpiece. How interesting, Marshall said, looking at her admiringly. I wish I could learn to do that. You seem talented already, the guest said, smiling at his work. You have your own special gift. Marshall blushed with embarrassment, but his shining eyes said it all. Thank you, Aunt Olivia. Edgar, watching them, smiled. He saw that the guest had found the key to his son's heart, and he was infinitely grateful to her. The evening passed warmly. Olivia talked about various artists, paintings, and flowers. Marshall asked her numerous questions, and she gladly answered them. Moreover, Olivia learned a lot of interesting things about Edgar and his son. About how the former orderly takes care of Marshall, how he manages with him, and how they spend time together. And she also saw the strong and tender love that binds father and son. Thank you, Edgar, for your help, support, and everything, Olivia said before going to bed. In doing so, she switched to the informal you for the first time. Edgar noticed this. Don't mention it. I hope you sleep well. The herbs in my apartment are coming. You won't even notice when you fall asleep. Olivia lay down on the sofa, and thoughts rushed in on her with new force. What will happen next? Where is Edwin? Why is he deceiving her? She didn't know the answers to these questions. And when, actually, was she supposed to look for them? Her husband, by the way, is good too. He left, turned off the phone, and the wife just sits and watches the dacha. Clever plan, of course. He needs to see the boss. So what? I wonder where this boss is. Soon fatigue, worries, and a sleepless night took their toll. Olivia fell asleep, sinking into a dream that involuntarily took her back to the past. There she was, little Olivia, standing on the forest edge near an old, leaning wooden house. It smelled of resin and decaying leaves. This was Grandpa Wiener's dacha, where little Olivia spent every summer. Olivia, sunshine, the voice of her late grandfather echoed in her mind. Come to me, granddaughter, help me with the garden beds. Grandpa Wiener, tall with kind eyes and a gray beard, worked in the garden. He told her fairy tales about forest spirits and about how important it is to live in harmony with nature. Suddenly, the scene changed. Olivia was sitting at a desk in a school classroom. The smell of chalk, old textbooks, the laughter of classmates, and the whispers of boys. She, little Olivia, with braids, diligently drew a daisy in her notebook. She was surrounded by other children in uniform dresses and suits. Olivia, you are lost in thought again? Audrey, her best friend, asked. I wonder what you're thinking about. About the dacha, about Grandpa, the girl replied quietly, blushing. Well, tell me, what's so special there? Audrey smiled. Everything is interesting there. Olivia became animated. Grandpa always knows where the tastiest wild strawberries and blueberries grow. He also taught me to distinguish dandelions from coltsfoot and showed me the constellations of the big and little bears in the sky. And there's a huge garden there. Apples, cherries, pears grow there, and there are bees. Grandpa says bees are little soldiers that guard our garden. Really? Audrey pretended to be scared. Don't be afraid. Olivia laughed. They don't sting if you don't touch them. Grandpa says they're very kind, hardworking, and they bring sweet honey. Sax, you're on duty today, said the strict teacher. Marge, you will sweep the classroom after lessons. Olivia, obedient and diligent, gladly carried out all tasks. She liked studying, as well as drawing and reading. She saw herself again as a little girl running along the path to Grandpa's house. A wooden log house, surrounded by a garden and blooming lilac bushes, smelling of wood and freshly cut grass. Olivia listened attentively to Grandpa, memorizing everything he said. She enjoyed being close to him, feeling warmth and care. The memories in her dreams were replaced again by childhood scenes. Olivia saw herself playing dolls in an old shed, listening to Grandpa's fairy tales. Her parents were always busy at work, and only Grandpa always found time for her. With the arrival of autumn, nights became colder, and Olivia, tired of city life, began to spend more and more time in the countryside, helping Grandpa. Olivia, he said, I'm sure you'll become a talented artist. Your hands are golden. You'll be able to capture on paper everything you want. After such words, she invariably took up a pencil and began to create. Flowers, trees, birds, everything she saw around her. Olivia liked creativity. It helped her express her feelings, forget her sadness, and fill her heart with joy. Time passed, Olivia grew up. She still enjoyed bringing space to life with colors, making it beautiful and cozy. Art school, then a vocational school, and now she works at a design bureau. Olivia, we need to urgently finish the window display sketches for the new store, said her boss. A woman with sharp facial features and cold eyes, the client won't wait. She worked with pleasure, putting a piece of her soul into every project. She loved transforming space, making it beautiful and cozy. Night shifts, endless projects, approval, criticism, successful and unsuccessful projects, this was her life. Olivia got tired, of course, but never complained. Once, at a design exhibition, she met Edwin. He was tall, stately, with an open, kind face and a charming smile. Your works are wonderful, he remarked, looking the girl straight in the eyes. You're a true artist. Edwin was a banking professional, confident and successful, and Olivia fell in love with him at first sight. He soon reciprocated her feelings. The young couple began dating, plunging deeper and deeper into a romantic relationship. Before long, marriage was not far off. In a white dress with a bouquet of white roses, Olivia felt like the happiest woman in the world. Edwin held her hand and looked at her with tenderness and love. "You're my muse," he whispered, kissing her on the lips. But upon closer inspection, their family happiness proved to be as fragile as a glass Christmas ornament. Gradually, Olivia began to notice that Edwin was becoming more distant and cold. Her husband worked a lot, came home late, and hugged her less and less. "Olivia," Edwin once asked her during another trip to the dacha, "tell me, are you happy?" "Yes," Olivia replied then, although inside she felt empty and cold. Being a faithful wife, she tried to convince herself that she still loved Edwin, that he was her only hope for happiness. But deep down, she knew it wasn't true. Olivia woke up in a cold sweat. The rays of the morning sun streamed into the room, illuminating the microscopic dust particles dancing in the light beams. Or maybe they weren't dust particles at all, but pollen from the herbs Edgar had collected. At that moment, she realized her dream wasn't just a dream. It was her subconscious trying to figure out what was really happening in her life. She remembered Grandpa Weiner's words, "Live in harmony with yourself, and everything will get better, you'll see." Olivia lay there for a while longer, recalling her dreams. She understood that her life had gone the wrong way. She had lost herself, her dreams, and desires, chasing after a phantom of happiness. At that moment, Edgar entered the room with a tray carrying coffee and pastries. "Good morning. How did you sleep?" "Well, thank you," Olivia replied, trying to hide the tears welling up in her eyes. "You look a bit sad," Edgar noted. "I just had a strange dream from the past." "Well, dreams are the language of the human soul," Edgar said. "They tell us about things we don't want to notice in reality." Olivia looked at him and saw sincerity and compassion. It suddenly seemed to her that she had met someone who understood her without words for the first time. Maybe your dream is a sort of call to action? Something to finally remember yourself, your dreams, your desires, and not just go to the dacha on weekends and sit there waiting for your husband. Forgive me for being blunt, but I really think so. Olivia thought about it. Deep down, she understood that Edgar was right. She definitely needed to change something. She couldn't live for others anymore, she wanted to live for herself. Not for Edwin's work, his inflated ambitions, endless business trips, and arguments with the management. "Thank you, Edgar. It's really something I should consider." "I'm glad. And now, let's have breakfast. There are some delicious pastries." Olivia smiled. "Did you bake them yourself?" He looked noticeably embarrassed. "Come on, you say the same thing. I'm no good at cooking. I bought it at the bakery. Fresh. It's nearby, just around the corner. Whenever I go to the dacha, I always take a small bag with me, each time with a new filling. Anyway, come on, join us." Olivia gladly accepted his offer. During breakfast, they talked about trivial matters, the weather, the flower bed that Edgar planned to break up in the spring under the window in the yard, and their plans for the day. Olivia felt cozy and comfortable in the company of her father and son. She even tried to forget about the events of yesterday. At some point, their attention was drawn to the TV standing in the corner of the kitchen. A splash screen of the local news channel appeared on the screen. And now, the latest city news, came the voice from the speakers. Olivia looked at the screen with interest. The host, an elegant blonde with impeccable makeup, reported on the latest events. Suddenly, a short report appeared on the screen about the bank where Olivia's husband worked. As it became known, a tragic situation has occurred in our city. Several days ago, the owner of a major financial institution, Brad Laird, was hospitalized with a stroke. His condition is assessed as extremely serious. Currently, The bank is headed by his daughter, Isabel Laird, who has given an exclusive interview to our correspondents. Olivia noticeably tensed up. The cup of coffee in her hand trembled. At that moment, a young attractive woman appeared on the screen, and next to her was none other than her husband. Olivia froze, unable to move. She could clearly see Edwin, grinning sloppily, embracing Isabel around the waist. And his casual laughter sounded unnaturally loud, as if specifically for the camera lens. "Isabel, please tell us how you are coping with the situation at the bank," asked the correspondent. "I'm confident that, thanks to the experienced team of managers, we will cope," she replied with a slight smile. "The most important thing right now is the support of the family and the father's loved ones. We all hope for his speedy recovery, although the doctor's prognosis is not very optimistic." At that moment, the camera switched back to Edwin's cheerful face. Olivia's husband seemed to be happy about Brad's misfortune. Her heart tightened with pain. She, the naive fool, thought her husband went to see the boss, but instead, he was embracing the boss's daughter, who apparently had become his lover. "And what can you say about the future of the bank?" inquired the correspondent. "Oasis is our common home," Isabel replied with a serious expression. "We continue to develop the bank, preserve the traditions established by my father, and are confident that we will remain one of the most reliable and stable financial institutions in our region." "Has Edwin been deceiving me all this time?" flashed through Olivia's mind. Edgar was watching the guest, still not understanding what was happening. He saw tears glimmer in her eyes. "What happened?" the host asked worriedly. Olivia silently pointed to the TV. Edgar finally saw Edwin. The young herbalist frowned. His face darkened. "I know this person," he said in a whisper. "Do you know my husband?" Olivia asked with sadness in her voice. Edgar sighed. "Yes, unfortunately, I know him. He's the head of the credit department. 3 years ago, when my wife died, I asked him for a loan to treat Marshall. He refused." "Well, why?" Olivia exclaimed. "He refused, saying that my reputation and background are not trustworthy. And also, you see, he didn't care that Marshall might be left disabled." "I'm sorry, I didn't know," Olivia whispered. Edgar smiled bitterly. "It's nothing. At first, I suspected something was wrong in the car, but then I decided I was mistaken. Who knows, I didn't remember the name anyway. Your husband, he uses his position, you see? Takes bribes, manipulates loans on favorable terms for the right people. All for money. And why didn't you file a complaint against him?" "Against whom?" "Maybe the manager, who himself took bribes without Brad's knowledge. I was just a simple orderly. Nobody cares about ordinary people if the one you're complaining to has influence. Edwin is a cruel man. He won't spare anyone if it benefits him. And this man is my husband?" Olivia thought, still unable to understand how she had been so blind before. Edgar approached her. "Don't worry. I'll help you sort everything out." "Thank you," Olivia hiccuped. "It's nothing. You are very kind and definitely don't deserve what happened to you." Olivia realized that the love and care she had invested in her relationship with Edwin for so many years had been completely in vain. She sat on the couch, face buried in the soft pillows, tears frozen in her eyes. Olivia saw them, Edwin and Isabel, like frames from a bad dream, repeating over and over again. Her unfaithful husband was embracing this woman, smiling to his mistress with the very same smile he had previously given only to her. Her thoughts were tangled, preventing her from concentrating on anything. How could this have happened? Just a few hours ago at the dacha, she was quite happy with life. Or did it only seem so to her? Edgar, sitting in the kitchen, periodically glanced into the room, watching the guest with concern. Marshall, leaning next to his father in the stroller, quietly drew in his album. "Olivia," Edgar cautiously peeked into the room, "maybe you want some more coffee?" "No, thank you. Just give me some time." "I understand." Olivia stood up, walked to the kitchen, and suddenly felt as if struck by inspiration. She took her phone from the table. She needed to do something, make a decision, anything at all to break free from this nightmare. What happened? Edgar asked, watching her with concern. I want to record a message to a very despicable person, she replied, not taking her eyes off the phone screen. After hesitating for a moment, she switched the cameras to video mode, adjusted her hair, and suddenly realized she didn't know where to start. What to say to Edwin? How to express to her husband on video everything that had accumulated in her soul? Her hands trembled, her voice betrayed her. Edwin, I don't know how this happened, where, and how could you? The camera captured her face perfectly, already without tears, but with longing in her eyes. There's no point in hiding this from you anymore. I understand everything. I saw you together. I saw you embracing Isabel, smiling, and Olivia took a deep breath, trying to speak to the camera steadily, without stuttering or long pauses. I'm filing for divorce, Edwin. I don't want to see you anymore. You destroyed everything that was between us. You betrayed me. You chose another. I wish you happiness. And I will move on. But now with my own life, as a free woman. During the recording, Olivia's hands were shaking, but she stubbornly tried to keep the phone steady. Yes, and while I haven't forgotten yet, I don't want to hear any explanations, regardless of what you try to say in your defense. You betrayed our family. I don't need a husband like you, she sighed and released the phone. This is the end, Edwin, Olivia whispered, and at that moment sent the video message to her husband. Edgar, watching her from afar, approached and put his arms around her shoulders. Well done. So strong. I'm scared. I don't know what will happen next. I'll be here, the man said willingly, and I'll always help you. Well, you don't have to do that. I don't want to be a burden. Marshall carefully rolled up to them in his stroller. Aunt Olivia, please don't cry, everything will be all right. Thank you, buddy, Olivia smiled, it's so nice to have you here. Look, the little one said, handing her a drawing, I drew you some flowers. Olivia hugged the boy to herself, a sweet smile playing on her lips. What happiness it is to embrace a child, to breathe in his scent, the smell of his milky hair. Why didn't God give her his own children? For the next few days, Olivia stayed at Edgar's apartment. Taking a small break from work, she helped take care of Marshall, looking after him and reading him fairy tales. Olivia watched Edgar, saw how he cared for his son and how much he loved him. She also understood that this man was someone willing to give everything for his loved ones. Marshall loved Olivia. The boy called her Aunt Olivia and often asked her to draw with him. They spent time in the park behind the house. They played a lot, drew, listened to music. Aunt Olivia, will you always live with us? Marshall asked one day. I don't know yet, buddy, she replied, but I am very grateful to you and your dad. At that moment, Olivia noticed a hidden hope in Marshall's eyes. The child was seeking maternal love and care that his father couldn't provide. And she decided to stay, no matter what. Edwin received her message, but only sent back an emoji with a mocking smirk. Nothing more. That's your respect for your family. Just empty words and lies at every turn. On the other hand, Olivia, crushed by betrayal, couldn't sit idle waiting for the divorce. Deep down, she suspected that the mistress was just one link in the chain of events. But she couldn't forget about Brad, the businessman who, apparently, was favoring her husband. Therefore, Olivia needed to understand what role this man played in Edwin's life, why he gave him such powers. With this thought, Olivia left Edgar's warm and cozy apartment, said goodbye to Marshall, but promised to return. Edgar walked the guest to the door with a sad smile, concerned about her condition. Olivia, I don't know what awaits you at the clinic. You might even run into your husband, but if you need help, I'm always here. And so is my car. Thank you. I hope it will be enough. Since walking was too far, Olivia boarded a bus that, as if by chance, turned out to be full. But that didn't bother her at all. The main thing was the final goal, and everything else was trivial. On the way, Olivia pondered what to say to the businessman if they met and how best to start the conversation. At the same time, she understood that the man was probably not in his best condition and wouldn't want to see anyone. The ward was quiet. Only occasional muffled sounds came from the corridor. On the bed, covered with a sheet up to his chest, lay Brad. He looked weak and emaciated. His face was pale, and his eyes lacked shine. "Hello," said the unexpected guest, trying to speak as calmly as possible. "My name is Olivia Smith. I decided to visit you." Brad struggled to turn his head, and his gaze met Olivia's eyes. Exhaustion, pain, and despair were evident in them. "Hello," the businessman whispered, barely audible. "What did you want?" "I want to understand." Olivia hesitated, not knowing how to formulate her thoughts. "I heard that you're unwell, so I decided to find out how you're feeling." Brad slowly nodded, but his gaze remained fixed on the ceiling. "Bad," the businessman honestly admitted. "Sometimes I feel like I won't be able to escape this ward anymore." "No, not just the ward. Even this bed." "Don't say that." Olivia cautiously took his hand. Her palm, unlike the man's, was warm. "You will definitely get better." "Well, that's not a fact yet. I think it's only beneficial for my daughter," Brad said bitterly. "I raised her on my own. However, Isabel, she's not my own." Olivia raised her eyebrow in surprise. It didn't seem like Edwin's boss was lying now. "I found Isabel when she was just a baby. In the park. When she was only 5 months old. Her alcoholic parents abandoned her on a bench. Probably forgot her. Or maybe deliberately. Luckily it was warm. I took her in. Raised her, gave her an education, and made her the bank's heir. And she betrayed me." "Don't worry," Olivia began to soothe him. "Your daughter's betrayal doesn't mean that you're a bad person. You gave her life. Isabel just turned out to be ungrateful." "I still can't believe what happened." Brad shook his head. "I gave her everything, invested all my efforts, and she left me, just waiting for me to die to take over the bank." "Who told you that?" Olivia asked, still not understanding why a sick man was saying such things. But at the same time, she felt that he needed support. "My daughter told me exactly that," Brad whispered. "She doesn't care about me. She only thinks about herself. She brought a notary. But I outsmarted them. Cited weakness, refused to sign anything. But that's not a solution. She will achieve her goals anyway. And she also says that I'm not the father. And that my business is her lawful property." Olivia pondered. "Maybe it's just communication difficulties. You need to rest more, but you shouldn't spend your energy on such thoughts." "Thank you. It seems you're the only person who's here with me right now." "Well, except for the doctors and nurses, of course. But they're at work, and you came by yourself. That's very valuable." Olivia spent some more time at Brad's bedside, telling the businessman various stories and diligently trying to distract him from his gloomy thoughts. Olivia saw the elderly man gradually calming down. The tension was leaving his face. At that moment, she suddenly realized that she couldn't leave him in such a state. "Brad, I will visit you every day, and you will definitely recover." "Oh, how nice that would be, Olivia," the businessman said with feeling, indicating that he was more than sincere. From that very day, Olivia visited the banker almost every day, read books to Brad, told him the news, and even played chess with him. In moments of particular emotional impulses, she talked about her life, about Edgar and Marshall. Naturally, Olivia honestly confessed that Edwin was her husband, who had taken her boss's adopted daughter as a mistress. Brad just waved his hand dismissively. As if to say, "Don't worry, you'll find plenty more husbands and even a small cart." She found something to grieve over. "He doesn't appreciate a woman like you, which means he's a complete fool. Such a man has only one way, to a psychiatrist in a clinic." Olivia, in turn, tried to do everything to lift the spirits of the despondent man. And Brad indeed began to smile more often. A spark appeared in his eyes, and he started to enjoy the meals brought to him from the cafeteria. "Olivia," the businessman said one day, "you are my true guardian angel and have done more than anyone else in recent years. I never thought I would meet a woman who would care so sincerely for a sick boss who helped make her husband a trader's career." "It's not necessary, Brad," she blushed. "I just want you to get better soon and bring order to the bank. And I don't need much. I'll divorce my husband, move to my dacha with Edgar and Marshall." "You are a wonderful person," Brad squeezed her hand tightly. "You helped me regain faith in people." Days passed, rustling the pages of the tear-off calendar. During this time, Isabel never visited her sick father, just like Edwin, who also did not deign to pay respects to his boss. However, Brad began to recover literally before their eyes, which shocked the clinic doctors due to the rapid positive dynamics. "It's simply a miracle," said the chief physician. "It can't be that such a severe condition in a man of his age started to improve so quickly." "Well, what miracles are there?" Olivia replied. "Just care and human warmth." Brad, feeling better, told her about his business and how he built his financial empire. Olivia listened to him, trying to understand what drives this man. "I've always liked helping people," Brad confessed. "I wanted to make the world better." "And you did," Olivia smiled. Soon he was discharged from the clinic with clear recommendations from doctors to exercise more. Brad returned home, but not to his luxurious apartment. Instead, he moved to a small country house, the dacha he had long dreamed of. At first, Olivia visited him and, together with Edgar, helped with household chores. Brad became a close friend and wise advisor to the young people. Olivia, on the other hand, became a support for the elderly businessman, showing the desperate man that there are still people in the world capable of true love and care. Upon learning this, Isabel decided that taking her father's business was the only way to avenge the fact that her father had shifted his attention to some artist. Meanwhile, a new stage began in Olivia's life. She filed for divorce, and Edgar supported her in court, much to the genuine surprise of her unfaithful husband. After the divorce, the former head of the credit department almost immediately lost his mistress and, most importantly, his business partner in Brad, who fired him right after his discharge. After all, formally, he was still considered the head of the bank and could make staffing changes as he pleased. Olivia found her happiness in a simple life with Edgar and Marshall, who, 6 months after her divorce, cautiously stood on his own feet. As doctors later found out, the boy who survived the stress was precisely lacking the maternal love that gave him a strong push towards healing. Isabel, having taken the bank into her hands, rejoiced only briefly. She went bankrupt within a year, lacking the financial acumen her adoptive father had. Brad did not judge his daughter and kept repeating that he gladly awaited her at his dacha. Cucumbers, tomatoes, garden beds, what could be better? Edgar's passion for collecting herbs also did not go unnoticed. Soon representatives from several pharmaceutical companies approached him with a bundle of lucrative offers and contracts. As for Olivia, she sometimes remembered Edwin and Isabel, but without pain or malice. Deep down, Olivia pitied the unlucky lovers with all her heart as they lost everything for momentary pleasures. She, on the other hand, found a family and happiness alongside her beloved husband Edgar, with their son Marshall and a daughter who was about to be born.